Chapter 1 Whispers Beneath the Reeds. In the hush of a late autumn dusk, as the last swirls of sunlight slipped beneath the edge of the mountains, Brother Ansel sat on the cloister wall and watched the mist rise from the river. The abbey bell had tolled vespers, a soft and familiar chime that rolled down the hillside and settled into the mossy stones below. Yet Ansel's thoughts wandered beyond the abbey's walls, into the veil of forest that darkened as the sky deepened to indigo. For many nights now, a different bell had sounded, not in waking hours but in dreams. It came just before dawn, distant and hollow, like something submerged. Its tone was strange, neither mournful nor jubilant, but full of age and patience, as though it had been ringing for centuries beneath the forgotten sky. He heard it from far away, its sound threading through the weft of his slumber like silver through fog. The tone was not alarming, but neither could he ignore it. It called not to his ears, but to something older inside him, something wordless and still. Brother Ansel was not a curious man by nature. He lived simply, tending the herb garden and the bees, copying worn scriptures, and caring for the birds who made their nests in the alcoves of the old stone abbey. Yet the dream bell stirred something deeper than curiosity. It stirred longing, not for answers, but for a presence, a place, a knowing without form. It was Father Cedric, the abbot, who first mentioned Veltrath Hollow. A swamp, or so it's called, the old man murmured over tea one rainy evening. East of here, beyond the Rowan Hills. I passed it once long ago. A forgotten place, all reeds and still water. It had a silence to it, thick and slow, like breathing peat. Some say it's cursed. Others say it dreams. That night, the bell came again in Ansel's sleep. Louder now, clearer. It echoed between twilight trees and across dark pools, beckoning. He awoke just before dawn, the bell fading into the hush of pre-dawn wind. He sat up slowly, breathing in the cool, lavender-scented air of his cell. The stones beneath his feet were chilled, and the small candle on his desk had burned down to a crooked stump. Outside, the garden was pale with dew. Moths clung to the shutters like faded parchment. The world felt poised, listening. He did not announce his departure, for he had no name to give the journey, no vow to guide it. Only the bell. He packed lightly, a small satchel of bread, dried apples, and lavender honeycomb, a leather-bound psalter, a woolen wrap, and in his palm a smooth river stone engraved with the abbey's crest, a quiet benediction from the river he had lived beside since boyhood. The journey eastward was slow and contemplative, as if the land itself had softened to receive him. The hills were steep, but the grasses bent gently, and the birds called low in the evening. He slept beneath trees with bark like wrinkled hands, listening for the bell. Each night it came. Its tone was growing more distinct, less echo, more voice. Sometimes it came with the scent of wet earth. Other times with the rustle of cattails or the heavy silence of water thick with roots. Yet always it faded before the waking hour, leaving him with the hush of wind through lichen and the faint taste of copper on his tongue. On the fifth night, as he lay beneath a willow curled beside a shallow stream, Ansel dreamed not of the bell alone, but of a lantern It floated above the swamp waters, bobbing gently, casting rings of amber light through the fog. And in its glow stood a figure, not threatening, not familiar, but still, waiting. He woke with a strange calm in his chest, like the slow settling of leaves upon water. The monk rose before dawn, wrapped himself in his cloak, and continued walking eastward toward the edge of memory and the heart of something lost. Veltrath Hollow lay somewhere ahead, still veiled in mist, still dreaming. And the bell, always the bell, rang softly, gently, ever inward. Chapter 2. The Road of Sleeping Ferns. The path into the eastern woods was not marked on any map Ansel carried, nor did it appear to be made by human feet. It wound like a forgotten melody, faint but deliberate, through meadows of dusk-colored clover, and beneath ancient birches with bark like peeling vellum. The land here held a hush deeper than silence, as though even the stones were listening. As Brother Ansel walked, the light softened into a gentle grayness. The trees thickened, their branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults, and the earth grew spongy underfoot. Ferns brushed his ankles, their fronds curled in sleep, folding gently as if dreaming in green. He moved with care, not out of fear, but reverence. Every root and leaf seemed to remember something he did not, and to disturb them without grace felt akin to interrupting a prayer. The air grew cooler, tinged with the scent of moss and faint decay, the clean kind, like rain-soaked bark and mushrooms after a storm. On the second night of his journey through the woods, he found shelter in a hollow of rock near a fallen cedar. The forest sounds were subtle, a distant nightjar, the soft plop of a frog in a hidden pool, and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by things that passed unseen. There was no fear, only a sense of being watched, not by eyes, but by the place itself. That night's dream came not in pictures, but in sensation. He felt the bell before he heard it, a gentle tremor like fingertips brushing the rim of a glass. It hummed through his bones and stirred a memory that had no shape, only longing. Then the tone came, smooth and resonant, like moonlight echoing off deep stone. This time there were words, not spoken aloud, but pressed into the space behind thought, not forgotten, only waiting. He awoke with wet leaves in his hair and dew on his skin, as though the forest had been watching over him while he slept. A small moth rested on the fold of his sleeve, pale as parchment. He did not brush it away. By midday, the terrain had changed again. The trees thinned, revealing wide clearings of wild grasses, tall and gold, swaying in silent rhythm. Beyond them, low hills rolled like the backs of sleeping animals, and in the valleys between them, pools of dark water glinted faintly. It was here that Ansel first heard it while awake. Not the bell itself, but the impression of it. It came on the wind, almost imperceptible, a kind of absence in the air, like the space where sound had just been. His breath caught not in fear, but in stillness. He closed his eyes, and the sensation deepened. A vibration behind the sternum, gentle as a lullaby. He knelt then, letting the grasses part around him. A dragonfly hovered nearby, its wings catching glints of coppery light. Somewhere a heron called long and low, like a memory unfurling. The bell was near, not close, but nearer than before, as if it had noticed him. That evening, the landscape shifted again. The grasses gave way to sedge and rushes. The air grew heavier with moisture, and his boots made soft sucking sounds as he walked. A thin mist clung to the ground even as stars appeared overhead, faint and flickering like candlelight seen through water. He camped on a low rise ringed by cattails. Fireflies danced in slow, spiraling arcs, blinking in rhythms that seemed almost meaningful. Ansel lit no fire. The night was warm, and the stillness was complete. In his dreams, the lantern returned. It hovered just above the waterline, its glow steady but muted. The figure beneath it remained unmoving, but Ansel saw now that its robe was sewn with patterns that shimmered faintly. Reeds, herons, water lilies, like things remembered by the swamp itself. As the bell rang out, closer than ever, the figure turned, slowly, gracefully, and reached a hand toward him. He did not wake with a start. Instead, he opened his eyes as if surfacing from a deep lake, the sound of the bell still echoing in the curve of his ribs. There was no longer any doubt. Veltrath Hollow was real, and it was not merely a place, but a presence, a stillness with memory, a bell with no name, calling gently, calling home. Chapter 3. The Mirror Pools. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the canopy, casting dappled patterns upon the moss and leaf litter. Brother Ansel rose with the slow, deliberate grace of the forest itself, each breath tasting faintly of damp earth and quiet beginnings. Around him, Veltrath Hollow breathed in muted rhythms, the gentle sway of reeds, the faint plash of water shifting beneath lily pads, and the whisper of wind threading through the silver-green leaves. The path had all but vanished here, swallowed by the swamp's patient grasp. But Ansel moved steadily, guided by something older than sight or sound. His boots pressed gently into the soft mud, leaving footprints that the water would soon claim. The air was thick with the scent of peat and wildflowers, mingled with the cool sharpness of morning mist. He paused beside a pool, still as glass, a perfect mirror to the sky above. Clouds drifted slowly across its surface, darkened by the shade of towering cypress trees. Dragonflies skimmed the edges, their iridescent wings catching the fragile light. It was a place of quiet reflection, both in form and spirit. The bell had not sounded in his waking ears for some time. Instead, its presence seemed woven into the silence around him, an undercurrent beneath the gentle lapping of water and the rustle of leaves. He knelt at the edge of the pool, dipping his fingers into the cool, dark water. The surface shimmered with subtle ripples, as if the pool itself were breathing in time with his heartbeat. In the stillness, his gaze caught something strange, a faint glow beneath the water's surface, faint as a dream half remembered. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving only the deep, endless reflection of sky and tree. He closed his eyes, allowing the quiet to seep into his bones, and in that moment he felt the bell's presence wrap around him like a gentle cloak, steady, patient, and endlessly kind. It was not a sound, but a feeling, a vibration of time itself folding inward like the closing of a flower at dusk. Here, in Veltrath Hollow, the boundary between waking and dreaming thinned like gossamer threads stretched across the twilight. Ansel felt as if he were standing at the edge of two worlds, each reflecting the other like the mirrored pools. In his mind's eye, the lantern appeared once more, its amber glow diffused by mist, floating softly just beyond the trees. The figure beneath it seemed closer now, not a shadow, but a presence, still silent, still waiting, like the hollow itself. He rose slowly, brushing the damp moss from his sleeves. The day was gentle and warm, and the swamp seemed to sigh beneath the slow swirl of drifting clouds. Walking further, Ansel came upon a narrow channel of water, its banks draped with hanging vines and delicate flowers that glowed faintly in the shifting light. The air hummed softly here, as if the very plants were breathing in rhythm with the bell's invisible song. He paused again to listen to the wet rustle of reeds, the distant cry of a heron, the soft splash of a fish breaking the water's surface. The swamp was alive with quiet symphony, a music not of notes, but of presence. At the water's edge, a small frog called, a clear, crystalline sound that echoed like a bell itself. Ansel smiled faintly, feeling the deep peace settle over him. That night, as he lay beneath a canopy of stars so thick they seemed woven from velvet and silver thread, the bell finally came. Not loud or sudden, but as a steady, welcoming rhythm, slow and measured, like the beating of a great heart beneath the earth. And in the dream, the lantern's glow grew warmer, casting soft pools of light across the reeds. The figure reached out once more, and this time Ansel stepped forward, his hand trembling with a gentle reverence. No words were spoken. None were needed. The bell rang softly, endlessly, a voice of time itself, folding inward. Chapter 4. The Veil of Still Water. The swamp deepened as Brother Ansel ventured farther into Veltrath Hollow, where shadows lengthened without haste, and the world seemed to breathe in slow, timeless waves. The trees here were ancient, gnarled and heavy with moss, their roots weaving into the dark water like the fingers of forgotten spirits. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and wild jasmine, mingling with a faint tang of something metallic, distant yet present, like a secret whispered between the reeds. Ansel moved quietly, his boots sinking softly into the spongy earth, muffled beneath layers of fallen leaves and thick moss. The sunlight that managed to thread through the dense canopy filtered down in muted shafts, casting delicate shards of gold that shimmered on the water's glassy surface like scattered fragments of a forgotten sun. It was a place suspended between moments, where time folded gently in on itself, and the waking world softened into dream, both fragile and infinite. Around him, the chorus of the swamp was alive, yet hushed. a slow symphony of frogs crooning a low, vibrating hum, the occasional soft splash of fish beneath lily pads, the distant call of a lone heron echoing like a melancholy song across the stillness. But beneath these gentle sounds, Ansel felt the presence of something quieter, older. The bell, not heard, but sensed, an undercurrent of sound folded into the fabric of the air itself. Near a cluster of water lilies, their round leaves resting like emerald plates upon the dark water, the surface of the swamp was so still it held the sky perfectly, a flawless mirror, reflecting clouds and ancient branches. Ansel knelt beside it, the cold creeping slowly up his legs, and peered into the depths where shadows moved with the slow grace of dancers beneath the water's surface. The bell was here, in this silence, in this waiting. His fingers brushed the cool water lightly, and a ripple spread wide, distorting the perfect reflection. The gentle motion stirred something unseen beneath, a flicker of amber light pulsing softly, like the heartbeat of the swamp itself. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The sounds of frogs and herons quieted, and the rustle of leaves stilled, as though the swamp awaited a secret revelation. From the fogged edges of the hollow, a figure emerged. Cloaked in robes woven from mist and shadows, it stood quietly on the shore, neither beckoning nor retreating. The lantern it held cast an amber glow that shimmered gently on the water's surface, dancing with the faint breeze. Ansel's heart slowed, and in the stillness he felt the weight of centuries folding softly into that quiet presence. The figure was neither young nor old, but seemed both, an echo of time itself, steady and patient. It was as if the hollow had taken form and come to meet him, carrying the memory of all things folded into the silence. He sat down slowly on a moss-covered root, the chill evening mist settling around him like a gentle shawl. The bell's tone pulsed through the stillness now, no longer distant, but a warm companion, woven into the night's fabric like an ancient lullaby. The figure lifted a hand, palm open, and in that gesture, Ansel's mind filled with a quiet understanding. This bell was not a summons or a lament. It was a song of waiting, a song of remembrance. It was the voice of Veltrath Hollow itself, the guardian of stillness and patience, marking time not with urgency, but with kindness. Here, in this quiet place, the world was not forgotten. The swamp was holding space for dreams, for memory, for moments folded gently into the quiet heart of the world. Each ripple, each breath of wind, each slow passing shadow was a note in an endless song of peace. As the sky deepened into a canvas of stars pricking the night with silver light, Ansel leaned back against the sturdy root, his gaze drifting upward through the skeletal branches. The bell's steady rhythm pulsed within him, a slow unfolding of peace that unspooled through his veins like warm honey. Around him, the swamp breathed in unison, the gentle sway of cattails, the flicker of fireflies dancing in the dark like tiny lanterns themselves. The lantern's amber glow softened and mingled with the pale light of dawn yet to come. In that stillness, Ansel felt a slow unfurling within his soul, a quiet coming home to something he hadn't known was missing. Not a place on any map, nor a destination to be reached, but a presence, a patience, an endless becoming. The bells sang softly, endlessly, a voice of time folding gently inward. The hollow was alive, with waiting, with quiet, with understanding. And in that waiting, Ansel rested. Chapter 5. The Whispering Bell. The days in Veltrath Hollow passed quietly, each one folding into the next like soft petals of dusk. Brother Ansel moved through the swamp with growing ease, his senses tuned to its subtle rhythms, the delicate murmur of water weaving through reeds, the faint shimmer of dragonflies in flight, the slow sigh of wind threading through ancient branches. The bell's presence was no longer a distant echo, but a whisper carried on every breath of air. It was a delicate vibration felt beneath the skin, like a secret pulse at the edge of awareness. Each evening, as twilight draped the hollow in pale blues and silvers, the bell's tone would rise gently, never loud, always patient, an invitation rather than a call. Ansel found himself drawn to a narrow channel where the water moved slow and dark beneath arching willows. There, the surface was so still it seemed to hold the weight of the world. He would sit for hours, watching the reflections shift and blur, feeling the bell's quiet song ripple through the air. One night, beneath a sky dusted with stars, the lantern appeared again, floating like a soft ember among the shadows. The figure within remained silent, but this time its presence felt less distant, more like a companion walking beside him through the hollow's deep stillness. In dreams, the bell's tone grew clearer, rich and warm, folding around him like a familiar embrace. The voice behind it was still nameless, but no longer unknown. Ansel sensed that the hollow was more than a place. It was a living memory, a space where waiting was not emptiness, but a gentle holding. The bell was its heart, keeping time with the slow unfolding of all things. He rested often by the pools and listened not with his ears, but with the quiet center of himself. The journey was far from over. The bell still called, still whispered of places unseen, of truths yet to be touched. But the fear that once shadowed Ansel's heart had softened into a calm expectancy, like the pause before a breath, the moment before dawn. And so he waited, wrapped in the hollow's patient song, the nameless bell singing softly in the distance, ever near, ever kind. Chapter 6. The Silence Within the Sound. Morning broke gently across Veltrath Hollow. Mist clung low to the roots of the cypress trees, and the sky, veiled in soft lilac and pearl, seemed to hover just above the water's skin. Brother Ansel walked slowly, as if the hush of the world asked him not to hurry. Each step forward felt like a breath released after lifetimes of stillness. He followed no path now. The hollow guided him. The bell had grown quieter in recent days, not absent, but subtler. Its song now lived within him, less a sound than a knowing. The lantern no longer flickered at the edge of dreams. It now floated beside him in waking moments, casting amber light on moss and stone. And the silent figure, who had once been a distant presence, now moved with him, just behind his shoulder, like a shadow that meant no harm. That morning, Ansel arrived at a grove where the water gathered in a great, motionless basin surrounded by leaning trees heavy with memory. The grove felt older than anything he had known. It was not marked by age, but by stillness. The kind of stillness that comes only after long listening. In the center of the water stood the bell. Suspended from a simple wooden frame draped in moss, it was larger than it had appeared in dreams. It rose like a dark moon from the mirrored surface, not gleaming, not grand, just quietly there, as if it had always been waiting. Ansel approached the edge and knelt in the damp moss. The water was too deep to wade, too dark to see the bottom, but he did not need to reach the bell, not with hands, not any more. He closed his eyes, and in that stillness the bell rang, not aloud, but within. It was a resonance that filled his chest, spread through his ribs like warm water, moved up his spine and down into the soil beneath his knees. It vibrated through every part of him, and with it came memory, not his own, but the hollow's. He saw the long slumber of the swamp, felt the slow erosion of time folding upon itself, the silence of things not forgotten, but gently set aside. The bell was never meant to wake anything. It was not a call to action or warning of danger. It was a keeper of stillness, a song of preservation, a lullaby to the land. The figure beside him stepped forward then, finally clear, no longer veiled by mist. They wore robes simple and loose, their face neither old nor young, but shaped by serenity. In their eyes, Ansel saw no secrets, only welcome. And for the first time, the figure spoke. "Now you've heard it," they said. Their voice was like wind through reeds. "And so you may rest." Ansel did not answer. He simply bowed his head, tears gathering quietly at the corners of his eyes, not of sadness, but relief. He had not come for answers, only for the question to be allowed to live inside him. The bell rang again, within, around, beyond. And then it was still. The figure faded gently back into the mist, as though they had never been separate from it. Ansel remained at the edge of the water long after the sun had climbed into the trees. He did not feel the need to move. For the first time, he was not searching. The bell had no name, because it needed none, and Veltrath Hollow kept on breathing, slow and quiet, waiting not for anything, but simply because it knew how.